have a moment of prayer. Holy and everlasting God, we give you thanks this day because you have called us to this place to spend time in fellowship with you and one another. You have given us the opportunity to lift our voices in prayer and praise and song. You have given us the chance to hear your word read and proclaimed, to hear the whispered words of wisdom from a friend, to experience what it means to be in community, and to hear again that challenge to go forth and serve. Lord, may you speak a word of hope and transformation and change to all of us this morning. May you challenge us right where we are to go where you need us to go and to become all you need us to become. Lord, may your mercy be ever in our hearts and enable us to show mercy to one another, even as we struggle to do so. Holy God, be with us now and always. Amen. We're continuing to look at some of the words from the cross, and they may be short, but they're powerful. Today it seems to be one that's a little out of context. Jesus saying, "Woman, behold your son." Here he is. He's in the midst of this incredibly painful experience. Here he is, fulfilling his life mission. Here he is, being the sacrifice for all humanity, being high priest and sacrificial lamb at the same time. Here he is, beaten, bloody, battered, abused, mocked. Here he is, literally going through the final moments of an agonizing death, moments that required him to be able to lift himself up and gather enough air just to say a few words. Here it is in the midst of all of that. In the midst of all that difficult experience. And he looks down and he sees his mom. He sees the one who was there with him from the moment he drew his first earthly breath. He sees the one who was there to feed him, to comfort him, to wrap her arms around him, to rock him as he was a baby, to clean him, to change him, to do all the things that an earthly mother would do. The one who was there when he was a little child and he came running in with a bruised knee or a splinter in his finger. She was the one who was there to bind his hurts and wounds, to let him know it would be okay, that the sun would come up tomorrow, and to read him a story late at night and put him into bed in the comfort of their home. She was the one who wrapped her protective and loving arms around him, no matter what it was that he faced throughout his life. And he looks down and he sees her. And there she is before the cross, heartbroken and weeping, inconsolable. This earthly woman who loved him as her own, this earthly woman who did so much for him. And rather than being consumed in that moment by his own pain, his own agony, the tragedy that he was experiencing, he lifts himself up, he takes a deep breath, and he speaks a word of hope to her. A word that she needed to hear, a word that hopefully would let her know that things would be okay, that there would be others there for her. As a widow and a woman in that culture, she was already at risk. She was already at risk. And now she was going to be the widow and the woman, one who had been crucified, one who had been put to death by Rome, one who people had said would be the Messiah. Can you imagine the ridicule and the shame and the uncertainty that she was faced with? And Jesus looks down and chooses that moment when he's dying upon the cross for all humanity to stop and say a kind word, a comforting word, a word of hope to Mary about her future. He wanted her to know that it wasn't over, and more importantly, she wasn't alone. Jesus, I think, was revealing something to us. He was revealing something about the love that God has for us. A love that says, no matter what you may face, I am with you. No matter what may be going on, I will be there for you. No matter where you go, I am already there. No matter where you've been, I've been walking with you. Jesus, in that moment, reaches out to his earthly mother, and he expresses a word of love and hope that says, this is not the end. There are others who will be there for you. There are others who will be there to strengthen you, to lift you up, to help you in your time of need. Jesus, in a real way in that moment, I think, was creating a community for Mary. He was providing her with a new family, a new community, a group of people that would surround her, a group that would come together in the times of joy and celebrate, and the ones who would be there for her in the moments of difficulty. You see, God loves us so much that He cares for us, not just in the big things of where we spend eternity and our salvation, but He cares for us in the smallest of details of our life, and He wants us to be in a place of community and fellowship where we have the support and the love that we need. I mean, when you think of the word community, what do you think of? Maybe a neighborhood, a town, a group of people. Maybe you think of a special group that you're a part of. Maybe some of you think of a TV show. I don't know. But community is a place, a gathering, a group of people that come together by, well, common interests, common thoughts, common feelings, things that are similar to them, and who seek to care and be in fellowship with each other. It sounds an awful lot like what a church is to be. A church is supposed to be a community of faithful, a community where people can come together and be themselves, a community where people can be strengthened in their moments of hurt and pain, a community where people can shout with joy and happiness and celebrate their blessings, a community that is called together, brought together by a love for God and a love that they share for one another. But how do you build a community? I mean, it takes more than someone simply saying, this is a community. This is a community. This is a fellowship. I mean, we can have the best place with all the latest gadgets and toys. We can have the best sign in town. We can have, all the kind of trappings of community in place and taken care of. But in the end, it's the heart and the soul, it's the spirit that's present that truly makes a community. A community. Let me share a couple ideas with you about what it takes to make a community. The first is the idea that we have to practice hospitality. We have to practice hospitality. Max Lucado, the famous Christian author, wrote about hospitality in one of his books this way. He says, hospitality opens the door to uncommon community. It's no accident that hospitality and hospital come from the same Latin word, for they both lead to the same result, he says, healing. When you open your door to someone, you are sending this message. You matter to me and to God. You may think you're saying, come over for a visit, but what your guest hears is, I am worth the effort. I am worth the effort. Hospitality is where we start, having the ability to be hospitable to one another. Hebrews 13:2 says this, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers. It's easy to be hospitable to the people you know. Well, maybe most days. I mean, let's be honest, even sometimes that's a bit of a struggle. We'll talk about that in a minute. Showing hospitality to strangers is that idea that no matter what the circumstances, no matter where we are called to be hospitable to those whom God places in our midst. Now, I know that's a scary thought. It is. It is. We live in a scary world. But when the day and time when those words were written, the trappings of the world, the things that they heard on their local news report were a little bit different, but it was still a scary place. No one knew when the Romans might knock on their door and say, it's time. Let's go. No one knew what tomorrow would bring. They dealt with many of the same struggles and issues that we do today. Maybe the shapes and the sounds and the trappings of it was different, but they too lived in a scary world. And yet, into the midst of that world, Scripture says, show hospitality to strangers, to be open, to accept the person that we might call other, for that person who we might call other may be the very friend that we need, and they strengthen our community. Romans 12:13 says, seek to show hospitality. Seek to show hospitality. That little word seek means that hospitality is an active thing. Yes, we have a place. Yes, we have a door. We put our times out front and we say, you all come with me saying that we seek to show hospitality means that we do just that. We go forth. We seek. We seek to find ways that we can interact with others. We can seek to find ways to extend the hospitality that God has given to us out into the community around us and the world at large. We seek to show hospitality. We don't just wait for people to show up and then decide to be hospitable. We take the hospitality and the love that God has given to us out into the world around us to make the larger community a more hospitable place. 1 Peter 4:9 says, show hospitality without grumbling. Show hospitality without grumbling. You know, sometimes being hospitable isn't an easy thing. Have you ever had somebody call you up late in the day and say, hey, by the way, I was going to drop by at 7 o'clock tonight. And you look at the clock and it's only 4. Because you want to be hospitable, you say, okay. But as soon as you hang up the phone, it's like, ugh. Because you're looking around the house and you realize you haven't dusted in 3 weeks. The kids' toys are all over the house. You know, the dog's left a mess in the middle of the floor. You know, your husband's underwear is hanging on the back of the chair because you haven't. Yeah, it happens. Sometimes we're placed in situations where we are challenged to be hospitable, and the first thought that goes through our mind is not now, Lord, or why, Lord, or oh. I mean, have you ever had one of those moments where you've been out somewhere and you see somebody walk in your direction and you kind of wish they hadn't seen you? Because you know you're supposed to be hospitable, you're supposed to be there for them, you're supposed to talk to them, you're supposed to be nice, but yet you're just not feeling it in that moment. Hospitality can be a difficult thing to do. Hence the reason it says, show hospitality without grumbling, because we have to realize that sometimes the challenge to be hospitable may take some effort. Hence the reason it says, practice hospitality, because it's not just the idea of practicing it in the sense of doing it, but sometimes we have to practice hospitality to be able to get to the place where we can be hospitable to one another. Practicing hospitality is a place where we begin to create community, showing that openness, that acceptance of one another. The second word is this: show kindness. Show kindness. You know, from time to time, in a group of people, whether it's a church community, whether it's a local civic organization, whether it's a school situation, a work situation, or even your family, sometimes things happen. Sometimes things get said or done or left undone. Sometimes people get hurt. Temptation is to hurt them back. You know, I think sadly that's all more true nowadays because communication has gotten so much quicker. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I've done it. I did it this morning. I was mad about something. I was hurt about something. And I had my cell phone. So you know what I can do? I can sit there and I can send a really quick text. And I'm sorry I did. Show kindness. Sometimes it's tough to show kindness. Sometimes when we have something that happens in our lives and we get hurt, our first response is we want to hurt them back because we want them to hurt us the way we hurt. We want them to be angry, upset. We want them to shed a tear. Yet, we call ourselves Christians. We carry the name of the one who is willingly mocked and abused and beaten and crucified on the cross. We follow the one who was mocked by saying, well, can't you just call the angels down from heaven and lift you off? Why, of course he could. Can't you save yourself? Is you here on this cross dying? Why, of course he could. Yet Jesus laid aside his ability to seek revenge and retaliate in order to show kindness. Kindness to the very people who were crucifying him, kindness to the very people who were mocking him, kindness to the people who, remember the first week he said, Father, forgive forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. 1 Thessalonians 5:15 teaches us that we must cultivate patience, restrain retaliation, and pursue kindness in order to build community. It's showing kindness in the little things. Being nice enough to hold the door open for the person behind you. Being nice enough to say good morning and hi and thank you and please. It's showing kindness in the big things of reaching out to our brothers and sisters when they are in need, to send that card when they're at home recovering, to send a little message that's a positive and uplifting one, to be there for them when they have a need. It's finding a way to honor the needs of Christ by showing kindness to those who are around us, even those we might be struggling to do that with. But as people of faith, as people of hope, as people of the community of Christ, that's what we are called to do. Third idea is this: it's to give of yourself. To give of yourself. There was a young couple from the hills of Arkansas, and they got involved in a local church where they used to do a lot of shouting and jumping and clapping and running down the aisles for Jesus. And they were trying to convince their grandma, who was the dyed-in-the-wool, old-time Methodist, that she ought to attend. The young man said, "Grandma, you should have seen it. The Spirit of God was really there. The music was rocking the place, and it was just awesome." Well, Grandma just kept rocking in her chair listening to the story. The young lady said, "Well, Grandma, you should have seen them. You should have heard the preacher. He was really with it today. He was shouting and screaming at the top of his lungs, and he was pointing and waving the Bible, and people were popping up like popcorn, praising the Lord. It was unbelievable." Grandma just kept rocking and listening. Finally, the young man said, "Grandma, don't you think you'd like a church like that?" Well, Grandma stopped rocking. She rose out of her chair and she said, "Honey, let me tell you, I don't care how loud they shout. I don't care how high they jump. What I want to know is when they come back down, what they do with it." Let me try that again. It's what they do when they come back down that counts. You see, we may shout loudly. We may praise loudly. We may put on a really good show. But when it comes down to it, it's what we do that counts. Do we give of ourselves? Do we offer ourselves to others? Do we offer ourselves to the world and the community around us? Jesus says it's not how good we feel when we leave here that counts. It's how we live out our faith on a daily basis and how we respond to the needs of others that's most important. It's how we love God and love those around us. You see, Jesus wants to move away from that mindset that says the church is about serving me or serving us. It's the one that says we see ourselves as a part of a church and a community that is in service to the world around us. It's an attitude change. It's a way of having community that's different. The community then becomes not about what I get out of it, not about what feeds me, but what I do to offer the love of Christ to others, and what I do to help feed others, maybe literally and figuratively. Giving of yourself, finding a way to take that community of love that is in your heart that God has offered you and making a difference in the world around you. Now, true community doesn't happen overnight. But when each person begins to practice hospitality, show kindness, and give of themselves, well, slowly then community begins to grow. Maybe it starts little. Maybe it's that little spark. Maybe it's 3 or 4 people deciding, I want things to be different. I want to find a way to be more hospitable to those around me. I want to find a way to be kinder to others. I want to find a way to give of myself in a way that makes a difference in the world around me. And that small group starts to act and interact and share that love of Christ that they have in their heart for those around them. And then that fire begins to catch. And it burns brighter. It makes a difference and the community continues to grow. People who would normally never hang out together begin to love each other, begin to like each other, begin to work together, and even to lay down their lives for each other. For one simple reason, that Jesus laid down his life for us. Just as Jesus expressed his love for his mother as he hung upon the cross, he challenges us to express our love for each other so that our community will become a place filled with people who know each other as family. And in the end, that's what we're called to create. A community that sees itself as the family of God, bound together by the practice of hospitality, sharing kindness with one another, and being of service to each other and to the world around us. This is our spiritual family that we have called to be a part of. This is the community that God has given us in this place at this time. As people of faith, living in this community, may we practice hospitality, show kindness, and give of ourselves each